The member for Wentworth.
My question is to the Prime Minister. During the recent Wentworth by-election campaign, you committed to urgently eliminating discrimination against students on the basis of their sexuality. I draw your attention to recent reports of the brave statement by Finn Stannard, a Year 12 student at St Ignatius College, Riverview, coming out as gay to his school community, and that he hopes to start a teaching degree next year. Does the Prime Minister believe that any Australian school should have the right to expel students like Finn or to reject or sack him as a teacher when he graduates?
The Attorney-General. Mr. Cool.
So of course the government doesn't expel a young student, a young brave student like that being expelled. Of course we do not. But let me explain to the House what the issue is that is now before the Senate and which I have discussed with the Shadow Attorney-General. Since 1995, in workplaces and other places, there have been rules of general application, and they have stipulated common-sense things that needed to be taken into account when determining the reasonableness of the rules. So the Human Rights Commission is tasked with the job of determining whether or not a workplace rule that might have an indirect effect on one group of people based on their gender or sexual identity is a reasonable rule. We have committed to the complete removal of section 38(3), which is the section which would allow for the expulsion of any student based on their gender identity or sexual orientation. What we have asked is at the same time that that section is removed, a very modest addition be made to the provisions of the Act at 7b, which tell the decision-maker, at first instance the Human Rights Commissioner, the types of things that they should have regard to in determining the reasonableness of the rule. Now, the reason that we have done that is we think that an equally important balancing issue here is not merely rights of people to be free from discrimination, which are critically important, but also the rights of the million people in Australia who choose religious schools to see those schools conducted in a way that is reasonably consistent with their faith. Now, the example that I've used at several points is the notion that a religious school might have a rule of general application that applies to all students, irrespective of their gender identity or sexuality, that says, at our school you all have to go to chapel once a week. We think that that is a fair rule. We are not at all convinced that the terms of 7b provide adequate protection. And what we want to put into that section is simply a provision that would draw the decision-maker's attention to two things. If a school has a rule like that, have they taken into account the best interests of the child, and is the rule reasonably necessary to protect the religious susceptibilities of that school? That is all that we have asked for. We could deal with this thing today if we could agree around something as reasonable as that. But as it was the case, what members opposite have insisted on is a bare removal of section 38(3), and member, we simply do not believe that that achieves the right balance between these two very important and competing rights: the rights of people of Australia of religion to see their schools associate and organise themselves in a way consistent with their faith, and the right to be free from discrimination. We would like to see this passed now, but it has to be a balanced passage.